Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to have you guys here, and I personally am so excited because it's Jimmy Buffett. All right, so
Chris Ashley.
and Chris Ashley. I'm so excited to have both of you guys here. We're here to talk about your new show. It's going to be on Broadway really soon. Why don't we just start with what the hell is this new show? So, got it? What is it? Escape to Margaritaville. What is it?
It is a musical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the story? Sort of how to begin?
Well, it's only been 5 years in the making, you know. So, I mean, I got bitten by the musical theater bug as a kid, and then I had worked on one in Florida that never got to Broadway, but it was a great experience doing it. But there were people simply that liked the idea of doing it and were fans of my music, who introduced me to the talented Chris Ashley, and I couldn't have been happier to know that as the director of the La Jolla Playhouse, he'd wind up directing this play. So it was a lot of people that had a vision of what Margaritaville was, and we're still molding it, because hell, I don't know what it is. It was a good 6-minute song, and it's worked a while. But I always had a great love of musical theater from my mother, and I actually played Emile DeBeck's son in the Mobile Theater Guild version of South Pacific. So that was my first entry into the musical theater world. But I've always loved it as live entertainment. As a live entertainer, I love the theater for that. And this gentleman is a master of it. So putting that together, and then like we were discussing, there are a lot more people that aren't on the stage tonight, and you hear that all the time when people are getting awards, but it's true. It takes a lot of people to put this thing together, and it's been an incredible experience so far, and I think we're actually coming to Broadway because I saw this on the marquee out front. You know?
Must have felt good.
I did a selfie under it with myself in it, yes. Yeah.
All right, so when you first met up with Chris, did you know what the play would be, or did you two collaborate? Sort of, how did that come about?
So we got together with our two book writers, Greg and Mike, maybe 4 years ago, which is actually, believe it or not, for a musical on its way to Broadway, the fastest track imaginable. A lot of times it's like 10 years before you hit Broadway. And we decided to make a musical using songs of Jimmy's that we know and love, and also some new ones. And we were aiming for a love story. And we decided we were going to do a love story between a guy who's like dead center in Jimmy's world, like a singer in a bar band, and bartender, who, like new tourists every week, really enjoys the no commitment but a lot of fun kind of life with the women, and who ends up falling in love with the exact opposite in every way. A woman who's career driven and really wants to make a big difference with her life. So it's really easy to find songs for our bartender. And it's a little more challenging to find songs in Jimmy's catalog for a driven career woman. But he's written some. And the first thing we did is you came down to La Jolla Playhouse and took a little deep dive into our world.
Well, the interesting thing was, because this other job that I have, we spent a lot of time in Southern California. From historical purposes, we kind of came out of there, part of the surf culture down there. So I knew it well, and I knew the La Jolla Playhouse because I'd go to plays there. And Chris was the director of the Playhouse, and I knew the stuff that he had done there that had come out and had gone to Broadway. So I thought, this is really serious stuff. This could actually happen. So we went down and met up, and with Frank Marshall, who is an old friend and a co-producer of mine on some things, and involved with us on this, got us together there. Then it was interesting to me. I wanted to make sure that the writers were people that understood the music, and not people trying to do their version of me. And I'd been through some situations like that before, where, you know, I thought authenticity, and still do think it's something that it's in the songs, and I just thought that needed to be somebody that understood that and kind of lived within the culture of our great fans. I was hoping to find good writers amongst them, and with Chris and Frank, we did. And we found two great writers. They happen to be TV comedy writers, too, which was a little different.
Yeah, that is a little different. So do you have like a Jimmy Buffett or test that you do to figure out how someone's going to be authentic and really take your music and make it that much further and better for the stage?
Not really, because it's a great experiment to me. the interesting thing is that we're taking songs that people know, and you know, thank God we've been doing this for over 50 years. We've got a great loyal following, and yeah, it's an experiment. It seems a little bit of a far reach, but I've always wanted to do this. I've made a couple of attempts to get to Broadway before, because it was something I wanted to scratch off my list, but I never got to the point where I could be with so many great people that had been there and experienced before. So I just kind of took the songs in and said, yeah, if you need things changed here that'll fit to continue the story of the book through the show, you know, they're not sacred cows, you know. We can adapt that, and so I just wanted them to know that, and we've done some of that, but others remain true to form. So if you know our stuff, I think you'll have a real good fun with this show. I mean, the first run through we did, it was pretty amazing to me hear other people do my stuff, and at the end somebody said, "Well, how you feel?" I said, "I've never been to a Jimmy Buffett show." And I meant it. I mean, it was kind of overwhelming, but it was pretty cool.
Jimmy's like, one of the great things about collaborating with Jimmy is, you know, we'll call him up, or he'll be there in rehearsal, and we'll say, like, hey, we're thinking about doing this, and he'll say, great, try it. That's all. Pretty much always your answer is, let's give it a try. He has a really adventurous spirit.
So how did you personally enter the Jimmy Buffett world? It's my understanding that you became a parrot head. Is that true?
You know, I actually started with a pretty good knowledge of his music, but like maybe like his 40 or 50 most famous. And you know, parrot heads have me beat. You know, there's really every word of every song ever recorded. There's some people who like all the way have given themselves over to Jimmy. But we did stop by a couple of concerts.
Yeah.
And really, we're trying to make a show that both appeals to the parrot heads, right, who know every bit of the music, and to a hardcore theater-going audience that really is there for story and might know a bit of the music, but really aren't yet aficionados. So trying to get that balance between the hardcore fans and the theater audience has been a lot of the conversation about how do you make sure that there's enough Easter eggs for the hardcore fans and a really compelling, clear story that makes the songs feel organic and inevitable. And that's, I think that's one of the things that really drove when our producing team was putting together the next step for us. Actually, we're in rehearsals now. I just came from there. And then we're in a week going to New Orleans and Houston and Chicago on our way to Broadway. And they really picked towns for us that have Jimmy Buffett audience there, and that Jimmy has been to a lot, and also have very experienced theater-going audiences. So trying to, hopefully those are audiences that'll help us find the right balance.
And it's, you know, the songs are basically little stories unto themselves, you know, and so the ones that have lasted, that have been most appreciated by long hardcore fans, of course we put those in there. But it's interesting when the writers put them together and created basically a song line out of songs that, for me, all the songs in the show I would have never thought about to put on an album together. A, they were never written at the same time, and B, it was like, you know, it was, you know, always try to carry. There's two things that when you're doing a live, it's energy and recognition. It's pretty simple if you can stay there, you know. If people can recognize the song and you can take them on an energy ride to go high energy, give them a little break and go. That's the way I've kind of learned to do shows like that, and that's the same thing that this show has a great feel with it, because it was always there in the songs. Even though we might have adjusted them a little to fit the show, it still rides a really nice energy.
Well, I want to go into that. So one thing I personally think about your songs, and I may be wrong, but like with the Jimmy Buffett sort of feel, there's an atemporality. It's sort of like you're on the beach, they're telling these quick stories where there's not necessarily, some of them have stories, but some of them are just a feeling. And so how do you put that into a narrative show where you have a plot and people and things like that?
Well, you put them in and see how people in the live audience react to them, if they like it. But I thought it was very essential, and I'd seen Chris's work and I knew about his work, for the fact that I wanted authenticity to the characters that sang the songs. And the great thing is that our cast, again, there were a lot of people who were fans who were anxious to put themselves in these roles, which was a great asset to have, I thought.
Yeah.
Interesting that what Jimmy's talking about, the kind of the balance of a concert and how you sort of ride the energy and the roller coaster of that. one of the things that we keep coming up against and making a musical out of this is there's a kind of direct, genuine, live for the now in a lot of these songs. And then in concert, he also has this like sort of really kind of crazy, wacky, anything can happen quality that kind of like intersects with the very easy, genuine center of that music. And we've tried to capture both a really kind of genuine love story, and also there's a snorkeling kind of comes across the stage at one point, and there's a volcano that erupts, and spoiler alert.
Give them all away.
Like unexpected things kind of intersect with that hopefully genuine and appealing love story between two actors that have incredible chemistry together, Paul Nolan and Alison Luff, who do a lot of work for us. I mean, they're just so, the process of watching them fall in love with Jimmy's music is really the center of the show.
It wasn't hard for him to fall in love to come Monday, you know?
Yeah.
Sign of good actors.
Yeah, I mean, I see it every night. People are out there, like you're saying, yeah, there are the songs that go up in the energy level of being up there. Listen, I make no bones about it. I'm a shameless performer. You know, that's my job. So, in that role, I also like stories, and I like songs that have character, and then they go in your heart. They don't go necessarily just in your ear. So in trying to write just songs like that, you know, Come Monday was written about exactly what is in that song, you know, 4 lonely days in a brown LA haze. But I wrote it about a situation that was happening in my life, but I didn't realize how easily it would transfer to everybody else's.
Yeah.
But that's kind of cool to have in a show, you know.
It's cool to have. I mean, like that sort of. I feel like a lot of your songs are pretty universal, so I can imagine they go pretty well into a show.
Yes, deep down where it counts, I'm shallow. You know,
So, but let's talk about you dealing with the songs, dealing with this material. You've done shows before. You're a Tony Award winner, but this is kind of different source material than your average show, and you're dealing with comedy writers who are writing it. So, was this a completely different beast of a thing to workshop, or did it have a lot of the usual components?
I think every show is always unto itself, but this one more than most. And just the process of coming to rehearsal every day is incredibly fun because the songs have such a celebratory feeling to them. It also, you have to get the cast past a certain degree of hero worship about Jimmy. For first day of rehearsal, a lot of times you'll read the script through before the cast really knows the music. So a couple of they knew a lot of the songs, but the ones they didn't, Jimmy sang first day of rehearsal,
yeah.
And the cast was like, all the phones were like up, like they'd already been told you couldn't post this stuff, but like sent to mom and dad. It was very adorable.
I was nervous. I had to get all the words right. It was.
Do you remember all your songs? You still have them up here?
Most of them I do, yeah. But if not, I look at the audience and I can they kind of jump me on things, yeah.
Isn't it true that you and the star you took him out surfing while you were first rehearsing? Is that correct?
No, I took him out. I made him go play a bar.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of surfing.
All right.
But, one of our producers, Mindy, who's actually in the audience, owns a beach bar restaurant in Isla Morada called the Green Turtle. And Paul came down for 3 days, and they did a couple of concerts. And that little town was really happy about that.
Yeah, because I wanted him to experience like being a solo performer. And I talked to him before. He had not really. I'd assumed that on your way to as successful as Paul is now, you're going to work some gigs that are kind of not the most glamorous things in the world. But he had not actually played by himself solo in a bar where, there's people watching ESPN, there's other people talking, and, you got to get them.
So were you just sitting there watching him while he was upstage? Is that how it worked?
No, they did a concert together.
No, I opened for him.
Oh, it's a tough act to follow.
Yeah, but no, but... And I was just trying to help. He was nervous, but he came through pretty good. But I thought it was very essential, and I think we'll continue the process because it kind of, that's the real. If you're gonna play a bar singer, I think you have to experience.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was amazed. I've seen you play, stadiums and hold tens of thousands of people. I was amazed that you go into a bar venue, and even if it's Jimmy Buffett, people keep talking.
Yeah.
And they're like having the whole conversation. I'm like, you're like 10 feet away from Jimmy Buffett. Like, listen to the concert. Nope.
They think it's a bad Jimmy Buffett imitator. I've had that happen. But, yeah.
So
That's not him. I go, no, you're right. Okay.
yeah. So let's talk. You're talking about the process, and you're doing this pre-show run. You went to New Orleans. You went to Chicago.
It's coming up.
Okay, and so what are you hoping to get from them? And when you see it in those places, what are the little tinkers that you make that change from show to show?
So just backing up to the beginning, so we did two what I call readings, which are basically just like still script in hand. Actors learn the music, and you spend about a week, and you get to hear your show. We did a couple of those. We did a workshop in New York 2 years ago now. We did a first production in La Jolla. We learned a lot from that. We've kind of retooled, and now this is we're just finishing a 4-week rehearsal before we go back out to 3 cities and come into Broadway. And it feels like every time you do it in front of an audience, you learn more. What's working for you, what you just got to continue to work on, and hopefully your problems get smaller and smaller, while your triumphs get bigger and bigger.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, Jimmy, you've been doing music forever. You've been doing pretty much everything, a lot of different things for a really long time. And one of the things that I'm always really drawn to is you're a pretty avid book writer. You've written a lot of different books some are in my home, they're in my family's home, and yeah. So I'm interested to know, you've done shows before, you've workshop shows. They've not gotten to Broadway before, but you've also done other non-musical sort of creative pursuits. Are they similar? Was writing a book similar to helping craft a show, or sort of how do you go about doing this non-musical process?
It's my old dear friend Herman Woke, who I worked on the first musical I did with, which was Don't Stop the Carnival, gave me a great tip, which was write a good page a day. No matter what it is, if you're writing notes, whether you're working on a novel, whether you're working on a book for a musical. Basically what he was, I think, trying to tell me was to not overexert yourself, and if you get one good page a day, do the math, and you've got 30 in a month, you know. And that was an invaluable kind of a piece of information he gave me. So I've always applied that to, I like the challenge of writing writing a novel. And I've got friends and I've got family members who are novelists too. It's a very lonely and hard thing. And I'm so used to instant gratification from a live audience. When I was in the middle of writing books, I'd be working on the book, and I'd go, hell, I'm bored, and I'd go down to the club, and I'd just go up on stage and sing so I could get some instant gratification, and I'd go back to work. But, I really appreciated how people that do that without having the ability to go out and blow off steam like that have to concentrate so much on something as big as writing a novel. I never thought I could do it, but then I did, and then it was like, they did fairly well, but I enjoyed the process. And I learned everything, and it all went back to songwriting. If you just expand the palette on which you're creating a story, a song is 3 minutes. Now, if you had to get a hit song, you had to be under 3 minutes or 3 minutes for all. Not now, you can do anything you want, but that day to get on the radio, it had to be. So you were constrained to a 3-minute window in which to tell your story. So I thought, well, short stories, you get a little more of a palette to work with, and a novel is a chapter to a novel. So that was the way it was. And then what I loved about the first time writing for a musical was you're writing on assignment. I'd never done that before. So Chris has given me assignments, and I've tried to get good grades.
How were his grades?
Excellent.
All right, glad to hear it.
He's passing with AP credit.
But that's it. It kind of applies to that. So everything that I've done, just for the challenge of it and the fun to see it, just basically if I could pull it off, it's to challenge yourself to do it, was always came back, and it kind of solidified your ability to do everything like that, whether it's writing a song, whether it's working on a musical, or whether it's working on a book too. It's each one of them kind of helps you do the other one, I think.
That makes sense. All right, so let's talk about sort of the people who love your music. You could say the parrot heads, the diehard fans, and just the people who are really interested in it. And there's definitely a certain type of people. They wear the cool shirts, the Hawaiian shirts, and they love to go to your big concerts. Now, how did you sort of make it so that this show intersected with them and with your average Broadway audience? Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's that separate.
Okay.
I think the thing of it is there's perceptions of, the parrot head started, I'm a child of the Mardi Gras. I have no problem putting on a costume and going anywhere. So I love that fact about it when this whole Parrot Head thing. It was nothing we conceived. It happened. It was a spontaneous thing that happened in Cincinnati, Ohio. And an audience one day, they started dressing up for the shows. Well, you've got that faction that now took that on themselves almost as if they were a carnival crew. Like, you know, I grew up in Mardi Gras down on the Gulf Coast, and there were crews that thought the same way, and they kind of went out and they celebrated Mardi Gras. To me, that's kind of what the Parrot Head part of it was. But then what you come to find out after you've been doing this so long, that, yeah, there's that faction there, but there are other people that just go on vacation once a week or once a year with their family, and sometimes those songs are the backgrounds to their vacation. So they're not necessarily dressing up and going dedicated to a show and do the whole Parrot Head thing, but they're still listening to songs that kind of, you know, they take on their summer vacations without the costumes. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a lot of people out there that are just as into listening to the music because it means something to them that there are who dress up and come to the shows and do the Mardi Gras thing.
Absolutely.
One of the things we talk about a lot is what are we asking of the audience? In the concert, they're all standing throughout, and they all, like, they're really invited to participate straight through. Mm-hmm. And what we've tried to do in the play is they're going to sit down, they're going to experience a story, and then as the show goes on, there's more and more kind of room for them to sing along, be part of it. You know, by the end of the show, we're dropping beach balls on their head, and they're beach balls all over the theater.
He's kind of good at that, you know, and of the energy fluctuations in there. I won't give it away, but boy, it makes me laugh because, you know, we'd done La Jolla and we'd taken our notes and we'd reworked some things, and when we went in the other day just to do a table read and look at the new sets that were coming in, the costumes, I just get all excited all over again because I can't believe we're honestly doing this. Mm-hmm. And we are.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what were some of, when you were doing your show before, Don't Stop the Carnival,
Mm-hmm.
what were some of the lessons that you learned that you applied to this one that maybe not helped make it a reality, but that you realized what you'd need to do in order to help this be more of a thing?
Well, if you're trying to write a musical comedy, do not end the show with death.
All right. Writing that down
and
right
then
now.
have to write a song to get them out after happy. So that was a problem I had to run into, but it was a wonderful lesson. But it was just the ability to go and do it, and again, to a completely different audience, like we were talking about. Is this a Parrot Head audience? Is it a Broadway audience? I think and Chris has handled it so well to structure something, because I know the shows that I like to see some heart in the characters that they're singing songs. And the good thing we have going for us is you go in humming a lot of these songs. You don't have to wait for one to hum one to come out. Mm-hmm. So that kind of helps.
It's been because there's so many of these songs that are so beloved, figuring out where are we going to give them the song more or less as you hear it, you know, walking in the theater, and where are we going to take a left turn and give them something, like really turn that song into something new and different, and because there's so much dance music in it, mm-hmm. we have the opportunity to kind of like explode into dance.
That's the thing. I didn't want to be the one to make the choices of what songs went in. I mean, I know the 12 songs that I got to do or get killed every night, so those are going in. But then you got a lot of room, and I said, please God, let Chris know what to do here, and he did, because I didn't want to do it. I mean, because you're having to make a story out of these songs that were never meant to be a story together, and he and our writers did just an excellent job of putting in the songs. I just didn't want to have, it would have taken, we would still be here putting songs in.
So would you say it was more of a rubric of which songs the themes worked, or are you also talking about the energy levels in terms of what people will sort of recall, what people will do? How did you sort of go about choosing each song and knowing when to put it in and where?
All of the above. I mean, I think you sort of, you look at it from what's the shape of the score, and where does it have energy and where does it pull back. One of my favorite moments in the show actually is when we finally get to the song Margaritaville. It's a moment right when our lead character has just sort of discovered that the woman he loves, it's not going to work out. So it's like it starts really still and really sad, which is really in that song, and like the fact that we're not trying to pump the beginning of that song up into being celebratory and really letting the kind of wistfulness of that song have full value. like that feels so great, and then the song turns into a dance number later on.
Yeah, I loved it too because I started this song. I was hungover in a bar in Austin, so I felt that way. And by the end of it, I felt better when I wrote at the end of it in Key West. But I mean, I had never felt it till Chris put it into that way. As it started as kind of a little melancholy kind of thing as the girl walked away, because that's kind of what happened.
Wow. That's great. You guys seem to be simpatico in that way.
Yeah.
So would you say there are 2 new songs? Is that correct in the show?
So far.
Was it sort of like where you said we need this to happen in this song? Can you make it work? So like what was sort of?
I wrote them. I mean, he threw 3 of them out. So, but don't worry, I didn't throw them away. You'll see them again. No, but I mean that's what I love about writing on assignment. Chris asked me a couple times to write something about something in a scene. I love the challenge of doing it, and yeah, some of them worked and some of them didn't. It's fine with me if they didn't, because I know I can still use them somewhere else. So.
Yeah, that's true. So let's, you have the show, you have your books, you have your tour that pretty much has not ended for the last 30 years.
Yes.
For a guy who writes about the island life, you seem like a workaholic. Would you consider yourself along those lines? You seem like you're just always doing something, have a next thing going.
I get my time off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
All right.
So, but I love working.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, if you love your job, I don't see how that's an addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something you love to do and it's fun to do, and I'm lucky to have this job.
Yeah. Has working with the Jimmy sort of changed the way that you've gone about doing shows, or even your just personal routines every day?
He works harder than anybody I know, but I would say that the fact that at any time he could pop into town also keeps everybody on their toes. Like you fly more than anybody I know, and if you tried to chart a week in Jimmy's life, it's transcontinental. So there's also as our spirit guide, he's like somebody who can kind of pop up at any moment, and that's been great in the process.
So when the show finally premieres on Broadway, what are you going to do? What's after Broadway Escape from Margaritaville?
I hope we're still open the next day, and further on into it. I think it's we'll see. I mean, I just think that you never know what the public's going to buy, but a leap in the net will appear. And I think the net may appear here. And I just like, in surfer vernacular, I think we've got a good wave, and I'd like to ride it for a while.
Absolutely. And just for you, there seems to be, especially now on Broadway, which is cool, that there's sort of revivals going on, and a lot of rock music, and a lot of old, musicians that you wouldn't think using their music for Broadway. Do you see this as something that's going on, something that you'll do after this with other people?
I think you're totally right. There's a lot of rock world people and people from other media coming into Broadway right now. I also think that the idea of what a Broadway play is right now, or what a musical is anything that's good and feels appealing to an audience. There's not a formula for it right now, which is great. I would also say that the process of putting this one together, because none of these songs have one way they're supposed to be sung. I mean, Jimmy is so free and easy with them in performance. So adapting them to the stage has been uniquely easy with this music, because he changed the lyrics. He changed the lyrics in performance all the time. So
I change them every night. I mean, I've done about 45 versions of Margaritaville. I'll change them to the city I go into. So. And there are 2 or 3 songs that I'll adapt for where I am, because I think people like that. But that's just but it's pretty easy for me to adapt, and I don't mind doing it.
And adapting these songs to our story is a lot easier than it might be if they were Rolling Stones songs.
Yeah, that's fun.
So I want to talk to you. You're Jimmy Buffett, but you're also you're Jimmy Buffett, a musician, and you're also Jimmy Buffett, an insanely successful entrepreneur. And you have a Margaritaville empire. You have hotels. You have retirement.
That's Warren you're talking about. Huh.
But still.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. That came with the job. Yeah, it did.
But so what's next? Now that you've conquered Broadway, what's the next industry that you want Margaritaville to be on?
It just comes as I think people. I've always said the song was written in literally 6 minutes,
Yeah.
and it was a good 6 minutes. And but everybody gets their own Margaritaville. It doesn't matter whether you listen to it on the radio. But somehow I was lucky enough to put my thumb on the pulse of something that I think is part of human existence, which is escapism, and God knows we need it today, you know. And so, and I've been, you know, I escaped myself from other not so glamorous jobs that I had taken, and when I finally got to the beach, and I actually figured out that I could have 2 jobs, one working on a fishing boat and playing cocktail hour at Howie's Lounge on Duval Street in Key West, and still party, I thought, why did I go to college? You know, this is what I wanted to do. And, and once I grabbed a hold of that, I didn't want it to go away. So all this stuff that's been a product of, you know, whatever success we've had business-wise, all the first thing, it came from the fact that along that trail when nothing was happening and nobody was coming to see me, I had to get a job, and I lucked out and answered an ad in the paper, and the next thing I knew, I was a reporter for Billboard magazine in Nashville because I had a journalism degree. So going to school did help. Okay, stay in school. But and that part of it introduced me to I had a perception of what the music business was, and then after I worked for Billboard for my boss, I found the reality of what it was. And that was one of the greatest things that I learned was hold on to your stuff, because everybody's there to take advantage of you at that. And talent in the record business at that time was a very disposable commodity. So I knew from working there and seeing the way from the other side that you're taken advantage of pretty much if you let yourself be taken advantage of. So that I never wanted to do that. And I like in the beginning, it's the simplest thing. The first thing we ever did is why rent a piano from the promoter when we could buy one and rent it to ourselves for half the money. So it kind of started with those practical things, and then became, well, why wouldn't we own our own bus? Well, why don't we have our own bar? And so that's simply how it came. And then to find great people to manage and run it who thought likewise, and most of them were fans to begin with. And now they're running parts of this company that's big, and it's a fun place to work.